Hello class, welcome to HRT 622, week 5. This week's focus will be on organizational structures. Now let's look at the agenda for today. Part A, we talk about organizational structure. What is it? Division of labor and coordination, these two important terms. Coordinating mechanisms, we refer to 3 of them. And elements of organizational structure. Part B, we talk about departmentalization. And Part C, external environments and structures. Let's go to the first part. We're going to define organizational structure. In this beautiful sentence, division of labor and patterns of coordination, communication, workflow, and formal power that direct organizational activities. This is a good meaning of structure. So when we talk about the structure within an organization, perhaps we talk about all the rules, standards, team dynamics, power relationships, information flow, as well as job design. All these important components are within the term organizational structure. But two important foundations when you refer to would be division of labor and patterns of coordination. And division of labor refers to when managers subdivide different tasks in their companies or give separate jobs to different groups of people in their organizations. So this is called division of labor. And when we have this in our companies, perhaps we have job specialization too, because each group of people or one specific person is responsible for some tasks inside the companies. Now, perhaps you might say, why? Why do companies divide the labor among their team members? One word would be efficiency. They believe that this increases the efficiency inside their company. Now, another important foundation whenever we refer to organizational structure is the importance of coordination. How do we coordinate different things? And in a very simple language, coordination means that when all the activities work in harmony, or there are some alignments, there is a coordination inside that company. When we talk about a division of labor, as I've already told you, it brings more specialization in the company and it improves work efficiency. Coordination of work is also means, in one word, working in harmony. But the point that we need to ask here is that how do we coordinate people inside one organization? There are basically 3 mechanisms or 3 methods we can bring more coordination. One is in an informal way, number 2 in a very formal method, and number 3 through standardization. How can we make it a standard, or when we standardize our procedures? Now, let's go and have a look at these 3 important mechanisms. When we talk about informal, as you know, is perhaps most in the form of face-to-face communication, when team members communicate on a daily basis. Sometimes these people communicate over their social media platforms, or sometimes in very casual meetings like lunchtime. So the act of coordination can happen in an informal way. And this is also very common in some big companies around the world. For example, the ESA, as you read in your textbook, that is European Space Agency, does this a lot. They bring people and put people in a small team, small group, ask them to collaborate, share ideas, talk about their former experiences. This is an informal form of coordination. In Japan, we can talk about Toyota company. Toyota does the same thing. They put people in groups and ask them to share ideas, and they rely on the importance of feedback. The managers believe that employees are the best source of feedback. But when you talk about formal form of Coordination, as the name shows, it is through number one, direct supervision, and there is a hierarchy in formal communication. You need to give the report to your manager, and your manager reports to the someone at the upper level. So there is a hierarchy here, and we can say that here is that there is a chain of command. So you need to follow. When the rules are dominant, when people communicate based on the etiquettes inside that company. This is also very common in big companies because they believe that it makes your company cost effective, and coordination through hierarchy, however, can have some disadvantages or weaknesses, limitations too. For instance, what happens? Imagine what happens to employees' autonomy and creativity when they can't share their ideas easily. There has to be, through a lot of rules, through a lot of steps, if you want to communicate inside your company. And that is why many employees always believe that they have been micromanaged. So, and that's not a favorable thing in business. The last method or the last mechanism is standardization, when you make it standardized. So everything has been processed. This is very common when companies work for a long time. And when we believe that the way team members coordinate is standardized, it happens at 3 levels. Sometimes processes can be very standard. All people are aware of flow charts inside the company. So if you want to communicate with your boss or manager or the CEO, you have to follow this flow chart. And that is called a standardized process. Sometimes the action of a standardization happens at the output level. And when we say output, for example, is customer satisfaction or production quality can be the output. And they do their best to make sure all the team members work in harmony, create a form of coordination, and provide the best services. And finally, many companies around the world try to standardize the skills among their employees. One of the most obvious example is hospitals. Hospitals want to make sure that their nurses, doctors, emergency room staff have enough skills or are really qualified and offer the same level of services to their patients in the company. After talking about in our previous topic, when we talk about the mechanisms, we're going to talk about the most important thing in organizational structure, and those are the elements of organizational structure. What are these elements? And we need to be aware of them because they basically build the foundation. And when you look at one company's organizational structure, you need to be aware of all these elements or components. Now, the first one is span of control. And as the name shows, it refers to the number of people directly reporting to the next level in that company. How many people are reporting to someone at the upper level? Like how many employees are reporting to their managers? So when we were talking about the number of reports, we're talking about a span of control. Sometimes in some companies, only CEO receives 10 reports from their inferiors. Sometimes 20 employees have to report to their managers. So this is the thing that in business called span of control, and that shows that what kind of a structure is dominant in your company. Is it a wider span of control or narrower span of control? So if you're taking notes, write down these 2 keywords when we refer to span of control: wider versus narrower. So when we talk about Wider, it means that managers receive a lot of reports or more direct reports in the wider span. However, when we talk about narrower, as the name shows, so they receive fewer reports. Okay, but why is it important, and what does it show? We need to look at another relevant concept to span of control, and that is tall versus flat structures. So when you look at a company at a glance, this comes to your eyes. How many people are giving reports to the upper level? How many teams are doing that? For example, when we have taller versus flat structure, as the name shows, I want to show you a very good example for that. For example, companies with wider span, and when I say wider span means more direct reports per manager, of course have fewer layers of management, right? Because, for example, 100 people could report to one manager. In another company, 20 people. If that company has 100 employees, for example, a company A, if 100 employees could report to the manager, this is called a wider span of control. However, in company number B, it has the same number of employees, 100, but there are 5 teams of 20 giving reports to how many managers? 5 managers. This company has a narrower span of control. Now, what happens? Imagine when we have wider span of control. Of course, there are fewer levels because 100 people, one manager. And this kind of organization is more flatter. So it has a flatter structure, right? Because 100, there's another level and manager. However, when we talk about narrower span of network, 5 groups, 5 managers giving their reports, of course, we do have more layers of management. And this company is called taller structure because there are lots of levels in that company. So keep this in mind. This is like a formula that you need to put it when we talk about span of control: wider, narrower, and a relevant topic is taller versus flatter structures. We need this information for our class activity because we're going to look at one case, so keep it in mind. I might ask you this question: what is the span of control in this company? Is it wide or narrow? And how about, is it flat or tall? Now, but is this fine or so you might have this question: which structure is better, taller or flatter? So the taller also can be problematic because, as you can guess, there are several levels inside that company. And when we talk about taller, of course, we have higher costs of operation because 5 teams are working, 5 managers. So handling all this would be a little bit more expensive. So that can be one problem with tall one. Okay, now let's go to the next important concept, and that is centralization. There's another word you need to keep in mind. I'm sure you saw that in your PPT, is the opposite, and that is decentralization. So keep this information in mind. When we are talking about decision making, that's the time we are thinking of centralization. So, or in other words, centralization refers to the main decision making within the organization. If you remember last week when I told you about teams, and there were 3 important characteristics of teams: teams performance, teams diversity, and dispersion. If you remember the word dispersion means that how the power has been divided among employees for making decisions, right? So here, in a very simple language, when many companies keep their decision-making process or coordination or the structuring inside the company, when they make it decentralized, it means that the decision-making power has been divided among employees. However, when it is centralized, it means that only a small group of people, usually the CEO or the board of directors, they are responsible for making the important decisions inside the company. So keep in mind, decision-making, centralization versus decentralization. Now, if I want to give you an example, the example can be, like 7-Eleven in Canada. This company is unique because it uses both centralization and decentralization in it. At the upper levels of this company, when they're going to make some important decisions about the marketing, accounting, or team operation, only a small group of people do that. So what is the important element in this company in terms of the centralization is that this company is centralized. However, 7-Eleven has different branches all over the world, or even in Canada in different provinces, right? So they give this power, they give this authority to the managers of their local shops or stores to make their own decisions. What kind of products to order? What should be a local inventory? So in this case, the power in this company, in this structure, is decentralized. So this company has both of them. And is it possible to have both? The answer is absolutely yes. Now, the third element is formalization. So what is this? As the name shows, is the degree to which organizations standardize behaviors through a lot of rules, procedures, and especially training. The training is very important if you want to formalize or go through the formalization inside your companies. And when we talk about older companies which have been running their business for more than 50 years, these companies are highly formalized. All people know how to follow their routines. There are lots of standardized practices regarding how to deal with our clients, how to promote our products, so on and so forth. This is very important. However, when we talk about formalization, we need to think about some other external influences too. For example, the governmental decision can influence the process of formalization. One thing that I want to add, perhaps, and we need this when we talk about formalization, is we are talking about a mechanistic versus organic structures. I'll talk about departmentalization later, but let's go and look at mechanistic versus organic. Why is it important? Because this is an organizational structure with, when we talk about narrow, okay, look at the three important elements that we have here. If you remember when we talked about span of control, decision-making, authority, or formalization, these are the things that we need to look at. Now, companies, I might say, what is this in fact? What is this mechanistic versus organic? We already talked about three important elements, remember? So we talked about span of control, decision-making, authority, and formalization. And how can we look at a company by having these three important elements in mind. Some companies can be mechanistic. Sorry. Some companies can be mechanistic structure, some companies organic. Mechanistic is the time when we have narrow span of control in that company. There are a lot of groups, a lot of reports. So the span of control is narrow, as I already told you. And there is, of course, high degree of formalization in this company. All the rules, all the procedures have been established, and employees need to follow them during the company's activities. And also, decision making is centralized. Only a specific group of people make their decisions. Now, the opposite thing would be an organic structure. The span of control is wide. A large number of employees report only maybe to one manager. Decision making is not centralized, however, is decentralized. Different groups of people, different items in that company make decisions, and formalization is low. There are, of course, some rules, of course, some procedures. However, the employees have this authority to do and make their own decisions. So this is very important before we go to departmentalization. We need to have this information in mind. Now, in our part B, we are talking about departmentalization and why companies follow this, or why is it important for them? Because we want to put this is one form of putting different teams in different departments, or in a simple language, how can we categorize our company's workforce? Now, here we have three functions of departmentalization. It establishes chain of command. Each department has a supervisor. It creates common mental models or measures of performance, and encourages coordination through informal communication. I'll talk more about this. So when we talk about, it means that how companies group people together. In a very simple language, it means grouping employees. Keep this information in mind. Like if you look at our university, we have different departments, right? One of them is for MBA, one of them is for undergrad. We have also a UAP department for English. Just keep this in mind. When we have different departments, for example, in MBA, when we want to departmentalize, we try to offer some rules or chain of commands to those people who work inside this department. However, another benefit is that it creates a mental model. We are a team. We're working together, and we have a specific goal to achieve. And of course, different teams or different departments run their own meetings, like monthly meetings, in order to talk and share ideas. And that could be another way to create an informal communication. Now, these are the benefits, but let's go and talk about 6 types of departmentalization. A very basic one is called simple. We need this for our case study analysis when I meet you in the class, so please be careful here. Try to take some notes. It is like a procedure. And when we talk about the 6 types, the first one is the simple structure, the very basic form of how we group people in companies. In small firms, of course, fewer people, so a minimal hierarchy, because those people who are employees perhaps report to their manager only. The roles are broadly defined. Some people do lots of things in that company, especially when that's a startup. And it is okay, centralized because the owners make the important decisions. The staff just follow the rules in in that company, and coordination also happens through informal communication, like daily reports. When we talk about simple structures, one more thing, it employs only a few people, and typically only it offers only one product or service. When we have this type of company, the way we put them in different departments or the way we group them would be a simple structure. However, your company, of course, grows and it gets more clients. You need more people in your companies. And a functional structure organizes employees around specific knowledge or other sources. That's something important to know. For example, a group of people are working for the marketing team. Some people are for the production. Some people for advertisement. Some people accounting department. This is also a very common form of a structure in companies. Now, as you can see here, the chief executive, and there are four departments. Now, the next thing that I want to tell you is divisional. But before I go to divisional, because one thing came to my mind, and that is about what is the problem with functional, because we might need this information for our case study analysis. So for the functional one is that, of course, it has some limitations, because when you group people around different skills, they just focus on their skills and they do not look at the other important values inside the company. For example, they don't really think of customers' real needs. If I'm in the manufacturing, for example, department or administration department, I only deal with employees, my own employees. I do not think of the real needs of our customers, and that could be a problem. So some companies, like some banks in Canada, they're having a policy called rotation. So if you are in the desk services this week, maybe next week you are being asked to move somewhere else and work in the admin department to know what happens there. Or sometimes you work with the sales department. This is a good idea, and that can be a solution when we have functional structure. When we talk about divisional structure, that is when the company has expanded itself, and now it's a big company. And when we talk about division, it means basically in three areas. Now, number one, based on a geographic divisional structure, product divisional structure, and client divisional structure. So some companies follow this kind of a structure. Imagine when they have international offices all over the world. They offer different types of products to groups of people, and they are dealing with different types of clients. For example, suppliers can be one category or one division. In international customers, local customers, online customers. That's why the company needs the divisional framework in order to operate properly. Now, this is very important. Like one clear example here can be the McDonald's restaurants all over the world. Of course, we have the main bases in the US. However, they have Canadian restaurants. In India, we have McDonald's, or Hong Kong or China has McDonald's too, right? So these companies perhaps use this kind of structure to operate. And that's why we call them division. Now, it can be one of these three forms of divisions, or all of them. It's based on the size of the company and the operation, the scope of operation in this company. Like if we talk about McDonald's, and geographic divisions can be the branches in Canada are being operated here, and a group of people are responsible for that. However, the international ones, like in China or India, have their own offices with their own teams. Of course, they all report to the CEO of the company. However, McDonald's also has been divided based on product, because in India, perhaps they're selling more veggie-based hamburgers, right? Because it's India, and so they have a division over there, and they prepare such products. However, in China, people love seafood, like Hong Kong, so they perhaps preparing that division seafood for their employees, or for some special groups of people with diabetes or etc. And client is another form of division, also common in the McDonald's restaurants. But let's go a little bit talk about that. Is it okay? Is it a good idea to have a divisional structure for a company? One positive thing is that, of course, because it brings more, it is really related to outcomes. Some people believe that a divisional structure is outcome focused, very organized, and the main aim is on the outcomes or the products of the company. However, there can be a problem with divisional, and that is the expertise. If you look at this, the expertise is divided into different subcategories, right? They aren't combined in one place, and perhaps the motivation of people in one division to share their knowledge with another team is a little bit low, because they, whatever they achieved, want to keep it for themselves. So maybe the interdependence or the internal communication in these companies can be a challenge, and that can be the limitation. Number 4 is team-based structure, another common structure for companies when they want to departmentalize their operation. And when we talk about teams, as the name shows, is self-directed work teams organized around work processes. They usually have the organic structure versus mechanistic, remember? So they're following the organic structure and usually found within divisional structures. So imagine we have divisional structures, and each division has its own teams. This is another way they're working. So teams also getting very popular. The Bosch company, for example, in Germany is doing this. But is it always positive or negative? So the good thing about team-based structure is that they have a clear line of communication. The team members can communicate easily, and of course the costs can be another issue that we need to look at. So they can be cost effective in this case, because when group members are working together, that increases the efficiency. However, the problem is that it takes time for teams to shape, to create an identity. So timing is the one thing, and the team leaders are usually under stress in these team-based structure, and that can be another limitation. Let's go to number 5, and some people go with, or some companies go with, the matrix structure. When we talk about matrix, is the combination of two structures. When two structures are being used, for example, if you look at this chart, two things or two common structures are overlapping. For example, this company has some business divisions. Business divisions means that they're working on different products. For example, the assembly team is operating brake parts. Imagine this is a car company, and suspension and wheel systems or joint ventures. So the main division here is based on products, and the companies are doing differently. I mean, each division, but at the same time, there's another level of a structure, and that is the functions. So the purchasing is working. So the purchasing team is working in all these divisions. Innovation in all these divisions, or field forces, or operational excellence. So as you can see here, they both overlap. And some people believe that, so the common mistake is that, how do people report to their managers? Imagine when you look at this chart, in the matrix structure, we have only one manager here for example, one division and one function at one level in the organization, and so only there's one managers. So they report to two bosses. One boss is for the assembly, and one boss is for the purchasing one. Okay, and that's the way they have to report. The group, or this team, or this department. Okay, so imagine that this department is giving reports to two groups here. Now, number 6, or the last one, is the network structure, another common thing that we need to think of. And in the network structure, as the name shows, some big companies in the world like BMW are using this, and they're working based on their different companies all over the world work together in order to create a product. If you look at the Apple company, it does the same thing. Apple company, for example, China is responsible for the assembly. They might design it in the USA. For example, the parts are being designed, some part like camera, in Germany. If the teams are working like this is called a network structure. Is it positive? The answer is, of course, yes. Is getting very popular these days because they believe that maybe different parts of the world have their own capacities, have their own competencies, and this can increase their efficiency. And of course, when we look at the rapid growth of technology, that can be another factor. A lot of companies like this kind of structure. Let's go to the last part of our talk. What are some external environmental features and the way they affect our companies? We can talk about, when we talk about environments, some of them can be dynamic versus stable. In dynamic environments, we have rapid changes, unique situations like COVID-19. And in this, we usually use organic structure, okay? And for example, that can bring more teams together. However, when the environment is stable, perhaps people prefer to run mechanistic structures in their work. Another thing is the complex versus simple environments. Imagine, I'll give you one example of library. Library in a small town, and library at UCW or library at UBC. Which library does a lot of things? They have to do lots of activities. Perhaps the library inside UBC, right? So the environment, and in this case is the university itself, affects the way the library operates. Perhaps in order to operate better, there has to be a lot of rules. So it is mechanistic, and the decision making is decentralized. So a group of people make decisions. However, in a simple one, like in a small library in a town, so we have few environmental elements are dealing there, And then, so there are a few things to be look at, and that's why less need to decentralize. The last thing that I want to talk about is the importance of diverse versus integrated environments and the way companies select their structures. In diverse, like Canada, when we have different clients from all over the world, so perhaps they use more of a divisional structure and decentralize it. However, if it is integrated, there's only of a single product or specific group of people, less need for divisional structure and decentralization. The final thing is sometimes we're talking about hostile environments versus a munificent. So when we say hostile, okay, sometimes we have the inflation issues in the economy or the environment, or some diseases are getting very common. Again, we are using organic structures for to be more responsive in this one. However, if it's not, replace it very simple scenarios. We use less need for organic, and again, we just follow the simple structure. Thank you very much. The last thing that we want to do in the class, we're going to look at the case analysis, and that is Merit's Bakery in the United States. Tomorrow or this week, when we talk about this case, we're looking at 5 important elements. Number 1, what is the division of labor in this company? Number 2, what are the coordination methods here? Number 3, what are the elements of organization structure, like span of control, centralization, or formalization? We talk about mechanistic versus organic things about this company and the importance of departmentalization. Thank you very much and have a good day.